Welcome to the Travel Tidbits Podcast, hosted by me, Jamie Weidel, travel advisor and owner of Pineapple Escapes Travel. Join me as I share the latest travel news, top destinations, and expert tips for the savvy traveler. Because after all, travel makes life sweeter. I'm your host, Jamie Weidel, and today's episode is extra special for me because I'm joined by one of our newer Pineapple Escapes travel agents and my friend, Kathleen Chrystie. So Kathleen and I actually met on the very trip that we're going to talk about today. We were on a Galapagos cruise on the Celebrity Flora, and it's kind of wild to think that Kathleen then decided to make the leap and join our agency just about 6 months after we were on the cruise. And she has a very extensive travel background. She's lived overseas, has a great eye for detail. So I knew she would be a perfect fit for our agency. And now here we are sharing mics and memories. So it's super exciting to have you, Kathleen. So glad you're here. And today we're going to talk mostly about the Galapagos and Celebrity Flora. We're going to talk about the wildlife we saw, our staterooms, snorkeling, all the things. We'll be sharing our stories and tips and tricks from when we went to the Galapagos. So let's get started. So I guess to kind of start things off, we both did the 10-day package with Celebrity. And this is personally what I would recommend because it does include your flights. And it also included 2 nights in Quito before with some guided tours as part of that, the round trip flights to Baltra, and then a final night in Quito after we disembarked the ship before our flights went out. So let's start, Kathleen, by talking about the land portion of the trip and your thoughts on that part.
Sure. Hi, Jamie, and thanks for having me. I really thought that Celebrity did a fantastic job with the land portion of the trip. I have not traveled extensively in Central and South America. And so for me, it was just a great combination of getting away. They made it very simple. They greeted you at the airport. They made sure you got to your hotel. Everything was completely seamless from that perspective. I even know there were some passengers that arrived whose flights were canceled and they got there the next day. And while we were out touring, they got their breakfast and got settled, and then they joined us later in the day. So Celebrity really just made it super easy for that land portion. And even when we were headed home, they made it very simple as well. So I would highly recommend doing that. It just takes the stress out of the whole trip.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Celebrity did a great job of just kind of handling everything. Like it was seamless. So Mike and I were one of the ones who were delayed. So we didn't get there until like 3 a.m. the night before we were supposed to start touring. So then we chose not to tour that morning. We slept in, and then they picked us up at noon and we met up with everybody for the afternoon portion. But we were just done after all of that. We got delayed in Miami, and we did get in, but it was really late. But they were still there at the airport waiting for us. Everything was seamless. And the hotels we were in were very nice, very accommodating, good food, easy to navigate. So I felt like it's just very well done, very seamless. So I would definitely recommend that 10-day package if this is something that you are interested in. So getting to the ship, we flew in and out of Baltra. Celebrity charters flights to and from Baltra. So almost everyone who was on the ship was on our flight. There were a few people that flew in and only did like the 7-day cruise. They didn't do the pre and post, but most people did do the pre and post. So almost everyone on the ship was on our flight. And we had a little bit of an issue on the way in. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, as I said, I'd never really been there before, but Baltra is a little tiny island that's part of the Galapagos, and it was a naval base, a U.S. naval base during World War II, I think. I could have my wars wrong, but anyway, there's not much there except the airport and a runway. We made an approach to the runway at least 3 times, and the pilot had to do kind of almost touch and goes. I think the 3rd time, I bet we were 10 feet off the tarmac when he rocket fueled the engines to take off. And the situation, I guess, there is that the wind is really bad. And the thing that put me at ease was we happened to be at the front of the plane, and the stewardesses were in their area behind a curtain. But I don't speak Spanish, but they were talking and they were very laughing and having a great conversation. And so I took from that we were really not in any danger, and they did this every day. So that was super calming, but it was definitely an experience, right? And then we had to go back to the mainland to get fuel. And then the next time we luckily were able to land on the first attempt. But it was, again, the representative from Celebrity that was on that plane came and talked to us and calmed everyone down. And it was really a very well-handled, stressful situation from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think they handled it really well. I mean, and I think you and I are of the same boat. Like, we're very flexible and can handle things, but there were definitely a few people, like the people sitting next to us, who were panicking a little bit more than I was. So a little bit more fear of flying there. But I mean, they handled it really well. My only issue was I put all of my snacks in my checked bag and didn't bring any snacks in the plane because I thought it was just like an hour and 40-minute flight. And I'm like, oh, I won't need any snacks. They're serving us food. I'll be fine. Well, then by the time we tried to land and then had to go back the other way, fuel up and go back, we ended up on the plane for almost 6 or 7 hours before we actually landed. And I was hungry. I wish I had not packed my snacks. Yeah. So that was my big learning curve from all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then once we were finally there and we were on the ship, so they take you by boat out to the ship. The ship doesn't like pull into a dock. You go by Zodiac in and out of the ship. And so we finally get there. Everybody's really excited. And then we got to see our staterooms. So Kathleen, I think this is where you will shine. Let's talk a little bit about your experience showing up at the ship and your stateroom.
Sure. So the Celebrity Flora only has 50 staterooms on it. And they are all basically the same with the exception of, I think there's 4, maybe 6 staterooms that are a little different. And so we had originally booked a regular stateroom like everyone else, but Celebrity does this auction where you can bid for a bigger room. And on a whim, several months before the ship left, I had done that. And we won the lottery, which I guess means we offered to pay more than other people, but it was still a great deal. We got put into the penthouse suite, which is an absolutely amazing, gorgeous room on the back of the ship. They have 2 of them. And it was just a phenomenal room. The bathroom was crazy. There was a half bath in addition to the main bath, a huge bedroom, a huge living room, 2 wraparound decks. Actually, there are 2 decks in that room, and comes with all sorts of services. We hosted a cocktail party. We had all sorts of things that came with it. But I think all in all, I mean, I've cruised a lot, and it was probably one of the best rooms I've ever been in my life. And so now I'm kind of spoiled. So I'm having a little trouble keeping up. But I think, Jamie, talk a little bit about your room, because I think that all of the rooms are super, super nice. And that's kind of what sets the Flora apart. There are several different corporations that go through the Galapagos, and it's a very belabored process for them to get approved. So I think they're all really good options. But the Celebrity Flora was purpose-built, and it's a fairly new ship, and the rooms are fantastic, as opposed to some of the smaller ships that may hold 16 people or 30 people, where they're wonderful adventures, but the rooms are probably not up to standard of what you see on the Flora.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we looked at many different options before we decided on the Flora, and a lot of them are very like adventure based. So it's not the same luxury component that the Celebrity Flora has. And I mean, I'll admit it, I've become more and more bougie as I've aged. And so that luxury aspect was definitely something that was really important to me. I wanted a comfortable room. After going out on hikes and going snorkeling, I wanted to be able to have a nice shower, a nice bathroom, comfortable bedding. So Mike and I were just in an infinite veranda stateroom. So they have staterooms that have actual verandas, like outdoor verandas. And then they have the infinite veranda where the window just kind of comes down. So you're sitting in your room, but you can pull the window down to be able to get air in. And it kind of makes the room feel bigger, which is what I liked. So I personally actually really like these rooms, but there are some people who aren't big fans of them. But we had plenty of room. Our service was great. Our stateroom host was amazing. And funnily enough, we made friends with Kathleen and her husband, and then Jackie and her husband. So we were hanging out with the penthouse people, which I'm still not really sure how that happened. So we were hanging out with you guys and got invited to your cocktail party. So it was nice for me to be able to see your room and kind of see the different aspects of it as well to kind of compare. But I definitely wouldn't feel bad if you're staying in the normal room like I did. It's still very lovely. Lots of space. I mean, I loved the penthouse suite, but for me, that was a lot of space, like, especially for two of us. Mm-hmm. Like if my whole family could be in that room, it would be perfect. But for two of us, I don't think we really needed that, but it was really nice. And it was great for all of us to be able to come up and hang out for our bullied into cocktail party.
Yeah, so. we did bully you into it. The other thing I'll say too is just from the staff perspective, the staff amazed me. And I think it's really helpful, the small amount of people on the ship, but they knew everyone's name. You would walk into the dining room and they would greet you. And we kind of had the same table that we sat at with people and the same waiters and things. And it was really just a great environment to enjoy yourselves. And there was no real formality to it. People go and hike all day or snorkel or whatever they're going to do. And they come back, maybe jump in the shower. But like, there's no dress up. There's no formal nights. There's none of that. It's just very relaxed. And the staff on board is just extremely competent. They are friendly and very, very service oriented.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like they always knew who we were. They remembered our drink orders. They knew where we wanted to sit and who we were hanging around with. That was really nice. I think that is definitely a perk of a smaller, more luxury trip like this, but I loved it. So I think we also have to talk about food. So everybody knows I'm a big foodie and food is important to me. So I will admit I had my hesitations about the Celebrity Flora before I was on, like, what's this dining going to be like? There's only one main restaurant really that we eat at. And then the outdoor upstairs part, like, is it going to be okay? Am I going to eat enough? What's this going to be like? But I actually found that the food was really good. And our evening dinner experiences where we were with you most nights, I found the food to be really good. Sometimes a little slow because I think we were such a big table, but overall, I thought it was really good. What were your thoughts on the dining options and the food in general on the Flora?
First of all, I thought that the breakfast and the lunch and the dinners and the way they organized things were quite nice. The breakfast and lunches were buffets in the main dining room, which was super because sometimes you had time to eat. Sometimes you were going to catch something quickly before you went to the Zodiac for a tour or whatever. So that was good. And the selections were phenomenal. The fresh fruit was amazing. I mean, they had some really high quality items. And then the dinners were good. They had kind of a fixed list of things they would make. It was on the left-hand side of the menu, I think. And then on the right was the menu that would change every day. And there are some regulations in the Galapagos around food. So if you actually are, if you do research into going on a Galapagos vacation, you find out what the constraints are. And I thought that the chef did a great job providing really great, whether you like beef or you like chicken or you like seafood or fish or whatever, it was really delicious. I thought they did a good job. And then upstairs on the pool deck, or the top of the ship, I should say, was kind of a diner. I'll call it a hamburger, French fries, chicken sandwich, hot dog kind of place. And it was phenomenal too, just to sit outside and watch the views and just enjoy some more snacky type food.
Yeah, I agree. So it was a little chilly up there for me when we were on the ship. So I would order French fries down in the main dining room and they would bring them down to me, which was great. I think the foods that stand out to me the most, the lobster night, those lobsters were like the biggest lobsters I've ever seen. Like, and I'm not a big lobster girl, but those were quite the lobsters. And then there were soufflés. 2 nights there was soufflés. One night, I think it was passion fruit. And the other night, I think it was chocolate. I can't really remember, but those were really good, really good. So it was definitely good food. I'm not a big fan of buffet, but I was easily able to accommodate and make things work for breakfast and lunch. And it was really good. Kathleen, did you and Bill do the dinner under the stars?
You know what? We didn't. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking back at it and thinking we probably should have, but I think we liked the main dining room so much. And we had this great crew of people that we kept eating with and having fun with that we didn't do that. But it's a great offering that they have up on that top deck in that restaurant. They turn it into a really nice dinner under the stars with menus and things in the evening. And we didn't participate, but I think people that did liked it.
Yeah, we didn't end up doing it either just because I was afraid I would be cold. And I'll also point out, as Kathleen said, like, you do not have to be fancy. I had packed like some sundresses and things, and then I had to wear like a cardigan with it or whatever. But one night I think I wore the hoodie I have on right now and joggers to dinner because I just could not force myself to get dressed after snorkeling and hiking and doing all the things all day. So that, I think, is one really nice thing, is you don't really have to pack those nicer clothes if that's not something you want to do, or if you're trying to pack in a carry-on, that sort of thing.
They also, in the restaurant, there were a lot of people there that had events they were celebrating. Like Bill and I were celebrating a few things, and they did a super job kind of recognizing that people were there for special occasions. And I thought they were very tastefully done. So that if you're interested in going on the cruise to celebrate something, they love that.
Yeah. I think we had cake, 3 or 4 nights because of different people's birthdays and anniversaries. Yep. And yeah, so we ate a lot of cake as well during our cruise, which nothing wrong with that. But we talked a little bit about the ship. One thing I do want to kind of highlight is that there is like a lab downstairs where you can like talk to the naturalists and talk about different things with them. But really, you are there to experience the Galapagos, and that's what it really is about. So let's talk a little bit about our experience on the islands and with wildlife and what we did while we were out exploring. So give me a little overview.
Yeah. So I think for me, I love safaring in Africa. I love doing things like that are adventurous where you see animals, but I didn't really know much about the Galapagos and what I was going to see. So one of the things, Jamie, that I thought was super was they had a huge focus during the day before the next day, they would have a gathering of everyone with a naturalist or some of the guides that were on board. And all of the guides have to be certified by the government to be guides. They're not allowed to just randomly have people take people onto the Galapagos Islands. So they were super knowledgeable. And every day they would have a pre-brief of the next day, which I felt was really, really helpful. And it helped choose what we wanted to do. And it was really great to have the relationship with those naturalists. So that really stuck out for me too, just as an opportunity to learn.
Right. So every night before dinner, we would do these briefings.
Right.
And they would talk about what the excursions were going to be for the next day. And that's something else to point out, is all of the excursions are included with your cruise fare. So you're not paying extra in each port to do these things. They're all included. And usually there was something that was easier for others, like a boat ride to see the wildlife. Usually there were 2 or 3 different hikes. So you could do an easy hike that would be shorter, less rocky terrain. You could do a harder hike, which honestly really wasn't that hard in my opinion. There was only one that I thought was pretty challenging. And then also there were snorkeling options as well, snorkeling in different areas off the islands to see different things. So I thought that was really neat. My favorite island was actually probably the very first one we did, the Espanola Island, because it had the albatrosses. And I felt like that hike was just one of the most neat because we saw the blue-footed boobies. We saw all of this wildlife. And it was our first one too, I think, which helped. But being able to see the albatross and the blue-footed boobies on that hike was really neat. So let's talk a little bit about like our different days and what we did. So what all did you and Bill do? Did you guys do snorkeling or you didn't do snorkeling? Like,
we snorkeled a little bit on one of the later islands, but one of the fun things I did was I kayaked at one point in one of the bays, and it was open water, but it was amazing because the water was crystal clear and it was pretty calm. And you can literally kayak up to these sea lions and things. So one of the things about animals in the Galapagos are they literally are not afraid of humans because there's no reason they've ever had to be. And the beautiful part of that is that it allows you within certain terms to get very close to them. Like Jamie, you mentioned the blue-footed boobies. Like we were walking right by mothers with their nests, with their young babies. And I mean, just what you get to see and experience and how close you get to be to them was certainly something that I'll always remember. And I think one of the things that was really awesome off of Florina Island, we were on the outer deck of the boat just watching, and literally schools of dolphins came by. And, we probably saw 150 dolphins.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
It was very cool. And one of the guys actually took his GoPro camera and put it into the ocean and filmed them underwater. So we have the footage of that and stuff. And that was just adventures like that. That's really what you're making memories, and it's just amazing what you get to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. And each island was so different, like the topography, the wildlife that we saw, the different things that we did. We went to Post Office Bay, and that's where there's like a little mailbox there, and you take a postcard, and then you take postcards back with you and you're supposed to hand deliver them to someone in the US. So that was kind of a fun, quirky tradition that they have. We did all kinds of things. I think Mike's favorite was probably the snorkeling. There were sea lions in the water with him. And so he was swimming with the sea lions. I did that snorkeling as well, but I stayed more towards the top of the water. I didn't really dive down at all. And it was cold. I don't like to be cold. So even in the wetsuit, I was cold, but it was still really neat to see and to experience. Definitely something that I felt like it was worth it. I know that Bill's a big photographer, and all of the different wildlife. Of all the pictures he got, what were some of the best ones, and what were your favorite creatures that we saw during our trip?
Well, I think that, the blue-footed boobies everyone talks about, so they were neat. But what amazed me were some of the colors that we saw in other animals. Like there were crabs that were literally rainbows of color. They look fake, to be honest. It's the pictures of them. It's like, is that really how they looked? And they really did look that way. And then there were some awesome pictures he took of a lot of birds and things that were cool. We have some really neat pictures of the flamingos, the pink flamingos that we saw. So that was neat. And then we haven't talked about turtles, so we can talk about that in a little bit, but we have some pretty awesome turtle pictures as well. And that's neat too. So he's made a book like he makes for every trip, and, we'll have that forever. One of the things I wanted to point out too, Jamie, that you mentioned the snorkeling. Celebrity provides everybody with some equipment when you go there. So they provide you with a wetsuit. It's full coverage on top and shorts on the bottom, but it's amazing. And then obviously the footwear and the snorkeling gear, but they are extremely organized, right? So when you first get on the ship, they fit you for all this stuff. They have a place to store it. The Galapagos is very stringent on washing everything that comes offshore. So even if you just go on a hike, you have to wash the bottom of your shoes. You have to wash your shoes off because they don't want germs from one island getting to another. And Celebrity made that very, very seamless. Like it was amazingly organized. There was no chaos. When you went to get your wetsuit, it was right where they told you it was going to be. They just did a phenomenal job with those logistics too.
Yeah, I completely agree. So as I mentioned earlier, you're on a Zodiac to get anywhere. So anytime we're getting off the ship or going on a hike, going on an excursion, we're going on the Zodiac. And so typically you either have a wet landing or a dry landing. So depending on what kind of landing you're going to have is going to determine your footwear. So like I had Keen water shoes that I wore for the wet landings. And then sometimes I would still change into like my hiking shoes, depending on what we were doing once we got to the island and weren't wet anymore. It kind of depended on what the plan for the day was. But this was all very well orchestrated. They have a very nice area, like you said, where you wash everything off, where you have your snorkel outfits and everything. And as far as snorkeling, I also bought like a skin to wear underneath mine because I knew I was going to be cold. I was still cold, but it was worth it. I'll put a link to that in our show notes for you if you want to take a look. I did find that to be a worthwhile investment to have to wear underneath my wetsuit for the weather when we were there.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about all the different things we did, what was your favorite day?
Wow, that's a tough, like every day? Can I answer every day? A couple observations. I think the most favorite thing that I enjoyed was Espanola, the one that you mentioned, probably because it was the first day, but Florina Island was very cool. We were able to see a lot of animals in the morning. In the afternoon is when I did the kayak kind of trip and stuff. That was neat. So that was fun to just do something different that I don't normally do. And then the other island that I'll always remember is the Santiago Island that we went to because it was lava. It was lava flows we were walking over. It was amazing.
Yeah, that one was really neat. And like getting to see like some of the patterns in the lava, and it was really cool. Like there were none of them that I didn't like. Like all of them were so different. Like it was just a very neat experience overall.
It's an interesting observation. Just each of the islands really is, Jamie, so completely different. It's not like you're going to the Caribbean and you're going to see beaches and palm trees and they're all kind of look very similar. Every island is completely different. And that was really cool. Something that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. And different wildlife and some of the stories that the naturalists told too, like were fascinating, like the goats that were on, that took over and then they had to come in and kill all the goats. And it's just a fascinating background and fascinating history, in my opinion. So towards the end on Friday and Saturday, we visited Santa Cruz Island, and this is where the giant tortoises are. Mm-hmm. This was really amazing. It was like stepping into a documentary. Like it's something you would definitely see on TV. For me, this really stood out just because, one, they were not scared of us at all, and these creatures are ginormous. But I thought that was just such a neat contrast to some of the other things we did, because we did this more in a, like we all went as a group and had a lunch and then got to go out and see the tortoises, which I thought was really neat. What were your thoughts on Santa Cruz and the giant tortoises and that whole situation?
I thought that it was really, really interesting too. We went in the morning to the Charles Darwin Station, which is this place that was established to help repopulate giant tortoises. And each place these giant tortoises come from, the tortoises are different. So the tortoise from one island isn't the same tortoise as the tortoise from a different island. And they have them all segmented so that you can see the different kinds. And they have a very active breeding program. So they had little babies and they had really old ones and everything in between. So I thought that was very, very cool because it's a really living testament to the dedication that the folks in the Galapagos have towards their world. And then I don't know if you remember, we went on a trip and we all planted trees, right? So one thing Celebrity does is they plant these trees on the island of Santa Cruz. And it's an amazing statistics. It's hundreds of thousands of trees they've planted since they started. And I think there's other organizations that do that too. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then we went to a restaurant to eat and we had lunch and everything there, which was delightful. But then it's also a place where there are tons of natural living wild tortoises. It's not a zoo. In the Galapagos, the tortoise has the right of way. So like they can go wherever they want and they can live wherever they want, and humans can't manipulate that. So we were able to walk around, and I remember distinctly, I think, Jamie, you have a picture where you're like, have one hand on the tortoise. And it's like, are you kidding me? This thing is, I don't even know how old, and it's huge, but it was really remarkable that, again, they have absolutely no fear of humans, and you can really see them up close and personal.
Yeah. There's a picture of Mike and I that I love from that afternoon experience. And then I think it's important to note, like with the planting trees, they took us back into this forest. They had galoshes for us and like the whole thing. It was all organized, but it was raining when we did it. So it was kind of a mess, but it was still really neat to like feel like you were giving back at least a little bit, like as a thank you for allowing us to experience these things and see these things, which I did think that was a really neat thing to do and a really nice thing to do. And I think there's a big trend in travel in general right now to kind of do more of that give back to the area that you're at and try to not take from wherever you're visiting. So I really did appreciate that piece of it as well. Any other thoughts about the islands before we head back to Quito?
Just that, let's talk a little bit about like what you should take maybe.
Okay. Yeah, we can
on the trip,
talk about
right?
that.
So you mentioned the whole water shoe thing. I had a pair of Hoka water shoes that were great for hiking as well as kind of the wet landings. I think layers are super important because it was chilly at certain times, and also it could be very windy on some of these islands. So it was good to have layers. I know a lot of people wore hats because it was to keep the sun off their face and stuff. But there were also times where it was pretty warm out, right? So it's not always that chilly. And since it's on the equator or just about on the equator, the weather is pretty consistent all year long. They have times that are more rainy than other times, but temperature wise, I think it's pretty much the same all the time. So no matter when you plan the trip for, these tips are useful.
Yeah, I would definitely say a rain jacket is a must have. I had a rain jacket that I used as a layer, and that was really beneficial. Mike had like the athletic cargo hiking pants that zipped off so they could be pants and then turn into shorts. He really liked those. We both had like the bucket style hats with sun protection. I did end up wearing just a ball cap a lot of days as well. Just something to keep the sun off of your face, I think is critical. Mike now wants to wear his bucket hat around the yard, and I'm like, okay, whatever, like, sure thing. I think the skin underneath your wetsuit was really nice for someone like me who's more cold-blooded to have. And for sure, layers. Like, I was chilly at places on the ship, and then I would get off the ship and I was hot. Those like athletic dry fit shirts that like have sun protection built into them. I had several of those, and I ended up, they do provide laundry on the ship as well. I can't remember how many items it was, but I did have some laundry done on the ship so I could rewear those SPF shirts for some of our hikes. And I found those to be really beneficial as well.
Yeah. And the laundry, by the way, is really good, and it'll come back folded the way that no human can fold laundry. So I had to tell my husband, don't get used to this because it's not happening at home, but it was good. It was very well done.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a luxury Galapagos experience. Like, you're going to feel taken care of every step of the way. Everything is coordinated. Everything is included. You don't have to worry about anything, which I think really helps make it an amazing vacation. So we're kind of talking about the things that we're packing. So that brings me to our travel favorite of the week. So every week on the podcast, we kind of have one thing that we would say is a must have. So Kathleen, out of all the things for this trip, what would you consider your one big must have?
We had purchased like a waterproof backpack, and Bill was able to put his camera gear into it. And we didn't worry about what if we drop it when we get off the Zodiac. You could stick your phone in, you could stick all sorts of things in. So I think it was just having anything that made something waterproof, right?
Yeah.
I think you talked before on other podcasts about the little plastic pockets for phones and that type of thing. But for me, it was definitely knowing that all this camera equipment and stuff that we had with us was going to be safe in the water.
Yeah. Because I mean, you are in and out of water. You're on the Zodiac. We did also buy like the straps that keep your sunglasses on, which was nice on the Zodiac. If you really were going, sometimes your hats and your sunglasses would get loose. So those were nice to have. But I mean, it was just really such an amazing experience. And there are a few, special things that you need to make it all the most comfortable it can be. But I will definitely put some links in our show notes so you can click through those if you are planning a trip to the Galapagos. I personally loved everything. I loved the hikes. I loved snorkeling. I loved the Zodiac rides. I loved the islands. I loved the Celebrity Flora. I loved it all. There wasn't anything I didn't enjoy. And even better, we had a great group that we were hanging out with. I think everyone on our ship was really friendly and easy to get along with, which I think definitely helped our overall experience just to have that kind of camaraderie with everyone on the ship. But I'm really glad that you decided to come over and join Pineapple Escapes, because you know how it is when you make friends on a trip and you're like, I don't know if I'll ever talk to them again, but maybe. And so it's been fun to get to reconnect with you and have a different type of relationship after our cruise friendship. So I'm really glad that you're here. But any final thoughts or tips, Kathleen, for someone dreaming about the Galapagos?
Just, do your research and think about what you want to see and you want to do. We didn't mention the return back, but Celebrity did an equally fine job getting us back to Quito and back on our flights and things. And they also offer extensions to Machu Picchu, I think, and maybe a couple other places. So all of those are great opportunities. And they made what to me was a little intimidating to plan into something that was seamless and easy.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And some of our friends actually did the Peru extension, and I have like the itinerary that they did. And Mike and I were really sad that we couldn't leave our kids for more than 10 days at this stage of the game with my in-laws. So, but if we would have been just a few years later, I think we would have definitely added that extension because it looked like a really great trip. And again, everything would be seamless and handled for you. So obviously, thank you so much, Kathleen, for joining me on the podcast today. And if you are planning a trip to the Galapagos, Kathleen or I would love to help you. We obviously know a lot about the Celebrity Flora, and we were on the outer loop cruise, but we can definitely help you with the inner loop as well. If this is on your bucket list, let this serve as your sign to start planning. It is definitely a once-in-a-lifetime trip, though I'm probably going back, but that's just me. I'm weird. And it has memories that will stay with you forever. The wildlife is amazing. It's truly a magical trip, and we would love to help you plan it. So until next time, keep on adventuring and exploring. And remember, travel makes life sweeter. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Travel Tidbits Podcast, where we believe travel makes life sweeter. The team at Pineapple Escapes Travel would love to help you plan a trip filled with lasting memories. Visit us online at www.pineappleescapes.com to start planning your next adventure.